Well, hello YouTube and welcome. Thanks for stopping by. I wanted to do an update on one of my previous axe videos with my Norlund collection. I finally got a couple of them out of vinegar vats and unrusted, and found some good hickory in the local lumber yard and got some handles on them to hang. So give me a minute, let me turn this thing around and we'll show you the collection these days. Thank you. Okay, here's a page that I found on the internet courtesy of Chris Killinger, who just has a YouTube channel called Killinger. And as far as I'm concerned, he probably knows more about Norlund axes than anyone on YouTube or the internet that I found. But this came from a vintage tool site and is a cut and paste from one of their images about the various patterns of Norlund axes. And this is as close as we're going to get to it this morning. There's the Voyager at 1 1/4 pound, a small hatchet, the Tomahawk, a 2-pound boy's axe, and for me, boy's axe. Handles 24 inches or less. My grandfather called them boy's axes. Anything with handles of 30 inches or more was not a boy's axe. In the second row is the Saddle Cruiser, a 1 1/4 pound double bit hatchet, the Trailblazer that was maybe designed as its companion at 2 pounds, then the Camper at 2.5 pounds, the Cabin Axe also at 2.5 pounds, according to their literature, and the Log Splitter at 3.5. I do have a Camper Axe. The head weighed 3 pounds before I made a new hickory octagon handle and put on it. So I'm guessing that these weights are just an estimation. Similarly, the Cabin Axe was a 3-pound head. What I'm fairly certain is the Log Splitter is not 3.5 pounds, but almost 5. I don't have a prospector pick, but if you want to see one, Chris Killinger has a couple of them. So let me back this up. I'll show you the quintessential patterns of the Norlunds that I have, and then some oddities that don't fit any of these categories of the literature. So hang on a minute, let me back it up and we'll get started again. Okay, here we go. Over on the left are the two Hudson Bay patterns by Norlund, the Voyager, which is the little hatchet, and the Tomahawk, which is the boy's axe. I've had both of these since the 60s, gifted to me from my grandfather. And next to them are the two double bits that show up in their literature. The smaller one is the Saddle Cruiser with a 1 1/4 pound head, and just behind it the Trailblazer, which I think they claimed it had a 2-pound head. This one was actually 2.5 before I put a new handle on it. And what appears to me to perhaps be a trend with Norlund is that it looks like they attempted to establish a niche targeting backpackers and canoe campers. With each of these axes, there is a very packable hatchet followed by a boy's axe size single bit and double bit. Very lightweight, very easy to pack. I don't know whether that was what they were aiming for, but it appears to be a trend. So, over here are the Camper with the on the left, and the one that looks like it's nearly new is the Cabin Axe. I see a lot of both of these on the internet. Not too much difference between the two. The Camper Axe is what I would consider a quintessential 2.5 pound boy's axe. The Cabin Axe I have seen, this one is actually a 3-pound head. I've seen them with 30 and 36-inch handles with the original little orange piece of tape on the top, as Norlund is wont to do. I've seen the Cabin Axe with a rounded pole. I've seen one that says Cabin Axe on it that has scallops on it, like a classic American felling axe. And then the last one in their list that they suggest in their literature was a 3.5-pound log splitter. Is this guy. You can tell looking at the size of the pole, man, this is a big slab of metal. This one weighs almost 5 pounds. And I have another one that does weigh 5 pounds. The weights on these, I suppose, varied. And so from the Norlund literature, these are the axes that made up their entire line. Also in the front is a pack saw. The one that's folded up was my original one from back in the day. I bought it at Reynolds Hardware Store on Pace Boulevard in Pensacola. Loaned it out to a friend who left it too close to the fire and melted it, and ended up getting another one. And somewhere in there, I must not have been teachable. Eventually I learned, don't loan your tools out to anybody whose tools don't look as good as yours. So, there are a handful of other axes that Norlund made that don't fit the profile of their literature sheet here. And so give me a second and I'll rearrange the camera and introduce you to a couple of those. Hang on. Okay. This little guy that I found in a used shop in Pennsylvania. It's another little double bit cruiser. Notice that compared to the Trailblazer, it has much less curve across the upper bout than the Trailblazer, which is essentially the same size. There's a couple of variations on this theme. Here is another one, genuine Norlund. And again, much straighter across the upper bout than the Trailblazer. This one is a 3¼ pound head. Very similar to its nearly twin brother. And then there's this guy. Which is a 4¾ pound head on a 36-inch handle. I've had this one for almost 30 years. Doesn't show up in any of their literature. And really, I don't usually have axes that are this big, except that it said Norlund, and it looked a little bigger than any of the ones that I ever had, so I ended up getting it anyway. And so here it is. It does not fit the typical model of packable axes. I would probably put this one in the category of the splitting axe, given that the head is over 4 pounds, and not a packable deal, but a very interesting Norlund, and not in their traditional literature. So, put it over here next to this one. Here's another one. I've got a couple of these things. I have had cabin axes that have scallops like this one does. This one has a bit more of a rounded pole than some of the other ones I have. Looks more like classic American felling axe. I got a couple of these. One of the cabin axes has scallops and has a different shaped head than this. One of these with scallops has a squarer pole like the cabin axe, but I don't think it's a cabin axe. It's a little bigger than that. And then probably the last one, I'm going to put this one over on the right with the bigger axes. These are the three that absolutely do not fit my template of backpacking and canoe camping axes. And last is this little guy on a 28-inch handle that I just made for it. This one does actually have a 3.5 pound head, but it doesn't have the curve that the log splitter says it should have. Neither does it say log splitter like its bigger brother over to the right. So I'm not really sure what this one is, but it certainly doesn't fit the category of their classic literature in terms of either the profile of the head. For some of these, the weight matches their profiles, but the head may be a different shape. Others of them, the weight is right, but everything else about them is different. But these are the Norlund axes that I've had over the years. I have a couple of more in a vinegar bath that are double bit cruiser type heads in the 3 to 3.5 pound range. Uh, I wish Chris Killinger was close by so we could sit around and have a cup of coffee and talk Norlund axes. He is the authority on Norlund axes on the internet and certainly on YouTube. So if you have not bumped into Chris Killinger's channel, go search him out. He has a way more expansive Norlund collection than I do, and has some that I've never seen anywhere, and some of the most rare of all the oddball Norlund bits that were ever made. So anyway, this is my Norlund update. Thanks for dropping by, and take care till we see you the next time. Thanks.